This week, we become the anime podcast of miracles.
And I elevate my game and enter the zone.
I'm Kyle.
And I'm Garrett.
And we watch anime. Garrett, this week we are adding to your ever-growing list of sports anime. We twist-served our way through Prince of Tennis. We joined the Devil Bats and smashed through iShield 21. This time we take on basketball, a sport where height and bulk are king. You know, what Japan is known for. We're going to discuss the hyperactive, testosterone, and sweat-fueled anime with a super subdued main character, Kuroko no Basuke, or in English, Kuroko's Basketball. But before we begin, Garrett, what are new fans going to be expecting from this show?
If Steve Nash was Japanese. This is
With,
the
like, the
Steve
same
Nash
haircut.
story, except in Japan. A under-talented, undersized player who will somehow become a Hall of Famer because he makes the people around him better.
And eventually he gets like a reference in a Nelly Furtado song in Promiscuous Girl. Taking the board like Kuroko. Promiscuous Girl. So yeah, this week we are talking about the show Kuroko no Basuke, Kuroko's Basketball. One of the things you may have noticed in the actual title screen was that the anime was originally called The Basketball That Kuroko Plays, but because I think they wanted to give you the idea that like it's not just Kuroko's, he's like his literal basketball that he holds with him all the time, like, you know, Tommy's balloon or whatever. It's literally telling you like this is how Kuroko plays basketball and it's special and all that stuff. So I think for now Kuroko's Basketball is fine. Kuroko no Basuke is great. But this show is actually really high on the list of a lot of anime lists that speak about top sports anime.
Right.
It's we'll just kind of give you also a heads up. The manga started in 2008 and ran all the way to 2012, and the anime came out in 2012 to about 2015. It is completed. And so back to the list, it's ranked number 3rd overall on the top sports lists by My Anime List. Ranker has it at number 2 overall for top anime list. And at the end of the show, we're going to work on the most important list of all, your list, Garrett, and whether or not this one is on the top of your sports list so far. But we're going to save that to the end. One thing that I thought is really funny is that normally, Garrett, you say, Kyle, when I watch anime, I want to watch it on Netflix. I don't want to watch it on Crunchyroll. I don't want to watch it on... I'm okay with it on Hulu, but like they're all terrible interfaces still. And this show is one of like the big releases that are going to come out in 2021. So if I waited like 2 weeks, we could have made this show and you could have watched that on Netflix. So it's a really high-ranked show. But before we begin on what's it all about, what are some initial impressions? What did you think of this show?
Well, we're talking sports anime,
right?
So the inner monologue returns.
Correct. It's all in inner narratives,
right? Because while you're playing, no one's talking to one another, but people are constantly thinking and having exposition while something's going on, and so there's a whole lot of that.
Right.
However, a lot of other anime, and this probably has to do with age, a lot of other sports anime is very big on the still screen with the inner monologue behind it. This actually had much more movement than the previous animes. And that probably just speaks to, again, when it came out, the advancement of animation in that time. Like, I think iShield 21 is much older. I know Prince of Tennis is much older.
Yeah.
So I think they were able to make the action a little bit better on this go-around.
Yeah, long gone are the days of, like, the 9 square, you know, zoom in, like a Prince of Tennis. Like, now we have, like, you have individual sweat droplets coming off of people, and the lighting is really good. So, yeah, I agree. I think this show really benefits from the time it came out. I can imagine what it would look like if it came out in 2020, and imagine if there was a CGI version of this. It would be terrible. But yeah, this show is really interesting. I think it kind of teeters the line of not going too cartoony like iShield 21, but it also adds the shonen flair that you
Right.
like out of sports anime, like, you know.
Right.
And
So when you talk about Eye Shield 21 and like the cartoony, one thing I was wondering is because no one at the time of release really knew American football in
Yeah.
Japan, Eye Shield 21 had to do all these cutscenes explaining the rules of the game. Basketball since the early 90s, in particular because of the Dream Team, has been a more international sport. All these countries have their own leagues. So at first thought, I was like, oh, is there going to be a lot of rule explaining? And I'm relieved to find out that there isn't, because there's a lot of assuming that the audience knows enough
already knows that stuff already. Yeah, and there's a lot of like references to like the Dream Team basketball, famous basketball players, and I think basketball lends itself to the fact that it doesn't have as many rules as like tennis and football does. It's pretty simple. Shoot ball.
Don't hit your opponent and put the ball in the hoop.
Put the ball in the hoop and make sure you dribble. I think that's literally it. So let's talk about the conceit of the show, what it's all about, and I think it all starts with how every show intros. It explains the generation of miracles.
This is so lame.
About quite literally a middle school basketball team in one town in Japan. Like, let's ease up a little bit, folks.
Right. So the generation of miracles was a starting five at a middle school who somehow had over 100 members in the basketball club, and yet only these five started. Meanwhile, any roster's like 13 people, but fine, you've got 100 people in your club. And there's five starters, and they win 3 championships in a row. They are unbeatable. And yet somehow, I don't know anything about the Japanese educational system, they get split up into 5 different high schools.
There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that, yeah.
But our lead, Captain Boring Kuroko, was on that team, but he wasn't one of the starting 5. He was the 6th man. And like many 6th men, he's an unsung hero. Except, unlike many 6th men...
Like the movie 6th Man, where the person is dead.
He's so unimpressive that the other team can't see him.
And we don't know about him. He is this mysterious... They call him the Phantom 6th Man, and it does remind me of the movie 6th Man, where I believe that the basketball player was dead, and like they had a ghost play.
Yes.
So
it was one of the Wayans, wasn't it?
It was a Wayans movie, yeah.
Right. So Sean Wayans was the better player, and he died, and he got into Marlon Wayans' body and made him good enough to play. Got it.
I freaking love that. So yeah,
it's only a step above.
So now that we've set up the premise that these godlike creatures, like the show Dragon Ball, the wish has been made, the miracles disperse all over Kanto, Japan, and now they're all in individual schools and they're no longer on the same team together. And so our main focus that we have on the show is the high school, Seirin High School. I'm really bummed because none of these schools have mascots. It's just the name of the school. I wish it was like the Seirin Devil Bats or the Cupids, and they all had like their individual mascots and made them look a certain way. But no, alas, that wasn't to be. So let's talk about Seirin. Talk about what we learned from the first episode, specifically about
So Seirin is a brand new high school.
Brand new private school, yeah.
Right. So it's been open. This is, I believe, the 2nd year that it's been open.
Yeah.
And it seems like they didn't open it in all 4. So say it's 4 years of high school. Is high school 4 years in?
I would say, yeah. Well, here's the thing. I think it is 4 years, but your 4th year is less about going to class and more about college prep and like cramps.
Okay, well, say it's 4 years.
Yeah.
Instead of having anyone who wanted to come sign up and staff out all 4 years, it seems like they basically started with a freshman class.
Yeah.
That freshman class is now sophomores or 2nd years.
Yeah.
And the leads in our show are in the new freshman class, the new first year class. So whereas another school might have players on the team or classmates who are 2 years older,
right?
It's essentially just them and 1 year older players.
One thing to note: so every time we talk about these players, their stats, their abilities, their overall demeanor and physiques, they're all 16 years old. I will state that when you see pictures, they're all 16 years old. This is Prince of Tennis level, like, disparities between what a 16-year-old actually looks like.
And they're coached, this team of ragtag player, not ragtag. This is not a story about
a complete underdog team.
They're not little giants.
Yes, exactly.
Okay?
They've actually.
It's not Devin Sawa coming in and doing the annexation of Puerto Rico.
No, this team actually had some success, and so now they're just trying to buffer up their team because they want to make another run at it.
But going back to the bodies that you're talking about, this team actually has, and this surprises a lot of people, it has a female student coach named Riko Aida.
Yeah.
And she's also, I believe, a second year, but she's really good at assessing talent because she grew up around her father, who is a professional sports trainer.
Right.
But it's highly awkward because she literally judges every man with her eyes and, like, calculates the stats on the muscle. And then one of the first people that we're introduced to is sort of the second lead of the show, and he's so jacked that all she sees is, like, heart emoticons all over his body.
This is something I had to put a pause on. I made sure I put a specific spot in our show notes. So the rating system, as you said, like, she scans them and there's pictures and, like, her rating system doesn't make sense.
It's 4 digits or something.
Let me read to you some of the ratings. I had to write them down because they made me laugh so hard. It's like literally like this woman rates her people in Lucky Charms.
Mm-hmm.
So Taiga, who we'll talk about later, he's like the top player that comes through Seirin. His umbrella is 3 frog heads. His sparkle is 3 thumbs up. His running cupids are 4.5. His star is 34 seconds. I didn't know how to do it. It was like colon 34. And his left pec is rated at 98.12, while his left pec is rated at 81.95. I don't know what she was rating or what that means, but she's like, oh my God, you're off.
But it's meant to seem really analytical. She's like the sabermetrics of Japanese basketball.
But like with the brain of like a Lisa Frank folder. Like... So it was. I'm like, your rating system doesn't make sense, and I'm glad you caught it too. I was like, what is she saying that I'm not? And
all right, it's not like she's being like analyzing the muscle and being like, well, his vertical leap would be.
I was thinking like combine numbers. Like this guy has this arm length or this, like the numbers and the symbols. Like, what are we doing? So we opened up to Seirin, trying to get more people in their team, specifically to bolster the club. Mm-hmm. And 2 new freshmen show up. Talk me through who these characters are.
Right. So it was very much, I know I went to community college and then I went out to UConn and New Paltz. So I never directly experienced this, but they were kind of having like a club fair on campus.
Yeah. That happens a lot because your club sports are really important and they're trying to like recruit.
So everyone's on campus like the first day and there's all these tables set around like that meme the guy who's like, prove me wrong and drink.
There's the libertarian section of the Japanese clubs.
And so the focus is of course on the basketball club, which is somehow hard to recruit for.
Yeah.
They get 2 players to sign up. And the first one that we see is a character named Kagami Taiga.
Yeah.
He is a beast.
He is a huge man.
They're trying to make it seem like he's like 6'2". Again, Japanese.
A Japanese man.
A Japanese man.
16-year-old boy. Sorry. We shouldn't call him man. He's a boy.
He's a boy who's like 6'2", really hates the Dixie Cup that the tea they give him is in. Because he's like, I came to play basketball and that's all I care about. And when he signs his name to join the club, they go, what? You don't want to put down a reason? He's like, I just want to play basketball.
And he throws a perfect like hook shot of his cup into the garbage.
But this introduces us to sort of the crux of the whole show and our lead character, Kuroko, because Rika says, wait a minute, we had 2 people sign up today? I thought we only had 1. Where did this other application come from? And again, you're introduced to this blue-haired character, Kuroko, who is like meek, tiny, understated, and he signed up and he was so underwhelming that they forgot that he was even there to sign up.
And on his form, it said, "I was here the whole time," which is honestly creepy to put on any form. Imagine you have a loan application and it's like, signed Kyle. P.S. I was here the whole time. So we get host to Kuroko, the like kind of invisible man,
right?
And who's so unimpressive that people never notice that he's there. So let's talk to the main characters. We got Taiga, which is kind of funny because his name is like kind of like Tiger, but because they said like he's ferocious like a Tora, tiger, and his actual name is Taiga. But so one thing about this show, and that we'll learn later, is that the characters' names are important in this show. Specifically, Kagami means mirror. So it means he reflects light onto him. He's like and so there's a lot of like light and darkness as a theme.
Deep, Kyle. That's deep.
And Kuroko, the Kuro in his name means black, like shadow, because he now wants to be the shadow of the character.
Right. Which it's interesting because before we get into the other characters in the show, we've got the coach, Rika. We've got Kuroko, and we've got Taiga, and that's really the focus for like 4 episodes. And
like we have the rest of the cast, which we'll talk before, but they're kind of not really important until we really.
Well, yeah, because it takes until like halfway through their first game when these 2 players are basically ignoring the rest of the team, and then all of a sudden
giving names and introduce and all that.
Let's introduce the rest of the team.
We've been playing this whole time. Let's forget about these people. And it's true, and like you get to know a little bit more about them and what their deal is. But as you said, the crux of the show is on Kuroko and Taiga. That's what the show is about.
Right.
So they get into the thing, and we learn that Kuroko says he played at the same school on the same team, and he actually saw playing time with the Generation of Miracles.
Right.
I'm gonna do that every time. And and they're like, what? This guy was like on the famous team with the famous boys? What the heck's going on? And Kagami's like, I'll show you. Like, I didn't know anything. But that's another thing we know about Kagami is that he actually lived in America for a long time. So he actually like knows basketball on the American level where it's like really competitive. And there's like a lot of, kids who come out of high school go right to the NBA and stuff like that. Like it's that serious. So he doesn't know much about the Generation of Miracles, so he decides to like, I'm gonna face this Generation of Miracle kid, and I'm gonna take him out. And so they have their first game, and what we find out is that Kuroko kind of sucks. He's not good at basketball.
All right, and Taiga's like, are you kidding me with this? Are you kidding me?
I know that the words he uses like, you are depressingly bad. And he goes, I like, take it from me, kid. You just
quit basketball.
Quit basketball. You're never going to do it. You're never going to make it, Joe. And so we get to learn about the game over time, but that is where we meet our first game. So the first thing they do is they make them go onto the top of the school, and they make them exclaim their goal for the year.
It's kind of like a gentle hazing of sorts.
It really is, yeah.
Right. So Rika brings her team up to the top, or the first years, and as you said, they have to proclaim the goals for the year because she says there's no maybes, there's no probablys. It's you have to know what your dreams and aspirations are, and that's the ultimate goal. And if you don't yell it out to everyone, then we're gonna like. What was it like?
Don't meet your goal,
girl you love.
Yes, you have to be naked and exclaim your love for your favorite girl in school.
Right,
and that is quite some stakes for this show.
Right.
So,
and so Taiga immediately he steps up and he screams out and he's like, "I'm going to be the best basketball player in Japan. We're going to win the championship. That's it."
Yeah. And and there's 3 other freshmen who we don't care about for the most part. And they're like, one's like, I want a girlfriend. And one's like, and one had like a really long diatribe. And she's like, next, and like punches him out of the way. So, and then Kuroko's about to say his goal, but then they get in trouble for it.
Right. And again, she doesn't realize he's there. And he goes, I really don't like to yell. Do you mind if I use this megaphone? And there's this line where she goes, where'd you get that? Like, you came to the roof of the building. How did you know that you were going to need a megaphone?
So that leads me to the next thing before we get into like the actual basketball is, what did you feel about that gimmick, right? The gimmick of Kuroko is you can't tell he's there. There's always a lot of like, what? Like spit takes when they see him. Right. I think Taiga almost choked on a cheeseburger 3 times over the course of the several episodes. So what did you think about that gimmick? Did it get old?
I found it very amusing.
Okay, good.
Good spit takes are funny.
Yeah.
As we got into the playing, I got a little bit more like, you know, like, because I get it. There are people that just blend into the crowd. They're not invisible, but they're nondescript, and they don't draw attention to themselves. They're probably would be really good at being spies, because, you know,
or assassins.
Right, they don't draw attention to themselves.
Right. So,
you know, so I get that there are people with those qualities.
Right, exactly. I think for the purposes of the show, the humor of Kuroko, because Kuroko is kind of like, he's a kudere. He's you know, everything's flat. There's nothing that, like, he never goes high or cold. Like, even when he's upset, he's always at the same level. So you need that kind of like humor that's exclusively his to like laugh at him. And I think that's the point of the gimmick. And it apparently makes him an effective basketball player, because in the middle of their first practice, before they go on to their practice game with the Kaijo High School, they run into the first generation of miracles boy by the name of Kisei Ryota. So tell me about Kisei, Garrett.
He is a blonde model.
He's a handsome.
You know, those famous Japanese blondes.
You know, those blondes. But here's the thing. When you see the colored hair of everybody else in the show, you'd be like, blonde's not so bad. Like, one's got green hair, one's got red hair. Like, you're just like, that's blonde I can deal with.
Also,
that's genetically possible.
Too many of these players are wearing their reading glasses on the basketball court.
Right.
Because you know that if you needed glasses on the court, you'd be wearing those Horace Grant-ass goggles.
Rec specs. Garrett, you're talking about rec specs. And yes, I also had rec specs as a kid when I played basketball. And it just, like, it would press your eyes so hard. You look like, you know, you were, you know, in one of those zero-G machines as, like, pulled your face back.
You were being birthed out the back of a rhino.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, they have no problems wearing their glasses willy-nilly. Didn't even have croquis for the.
Well, I mean, if you don't wear your glasses playing basketball, how can you do this?
Yeah, that's how you know that you have a plan.
You need to gently pressing them up the bridge of your nose to imply some diabolical plan.
While the light hits it just so much that you can no longer see the pupils.
Right.
Yeah, it's agreed. I think that's probably the hardest thing to swallow in this show was the fact that people's glasses stayed on.
So we meet Kisei Ryota, and he actually comes to Saren, the high school that Kuroko and Taiga are at, to scout them out.
Yeah,
and because he knows Kuroko, and he has a nickname where he calls him like Kurochi.
Kurochi, yeah.
He likes to add chi.
Anybody he likes or acknowledges, he gives the little chi ending to their name. So you'd be Garrett-chi and I'd be Kai-chi.
And he comes sort of knowing that Kuroko has his valuable skills that we have yet to really learn about. But he's also like he negs them very hard.
Really,
you know?
Yeah. And he wants Kuroko on his team. He's like, I see value in you as a player. I don't know why you came to this dumb new school. Why don't you join mine? And you can make me better and all that stuff, because apparently, like, he's a good player. And Kuroko, you know, in his pure kudere heart, was like, no, I promised Taiga I would stay with him, and like that kind of stuff.
Right.
So
well, and there's a loyalty there, but one thing we kind of skipped over this relationship between Taiga and Kuroko is in that match when Taiga says you're garbage, you're disappointingly bad, or you know, whatever he said to him. He said, I don't have any tolerance for weak people, weak basketball players. My goal is going to be the best in the world, or the best in Japan. Yeah. And Kuroko, somehow being inspired by this, says, yeah, you will be, and I'll get you there. Right. And he says, I want to be your shadow. I want to be the shadow to your light. So that, as you said with their names, even their names clue into light, reflection, and shadow.
Right. So the idea is that, which is crazy about the show, is that the main character isn't really the focus of the show.
Right.
He is actually there to elevate this other player who is kind of the deuterogenist of the show. And I think that's a pretty interesting.
He's just chucking balls to Amari Stoudemire.
Yeah. He's like, hey, Jordan, let me be your Pippin. You know what I'm saying? He's like, because you're honestly, to be true, there would not be a Jordan if there isn't a Pippin, right? Like, you need that. Like, every good basketball player needs a second person who's going to, like, elevate their game to the next level. They're going to be that. Steph Curry has his players, you know? Like, everybody has a second person that's just perfect at assisting them. And so that's essentially what we're going to learn over time. We get to they go to the school, and the school is just negging them even further. Like, we're only going to use half the court.
Right, because Kisei's invited them to play a practice game.
Right. And so they're going to do a practice game. So these are no stakes at this game. This is the first game you watch in the show. And they're like, we're not even going to throw Kisei in there because you guys are garbage. We're going to run. Don't let us go triple score on you. You know, negging them really hard. And they show they're not going to be pushovers because not only is Taiga is an exceptional basketball player, but Kuroko has his own special ability. Garrett, walk me through that.
He's essentially like a ghost. He finds a way because he's not quick.
Yeah.
Again, there's nothing. It's not like, oh, well, he can't shoot, but he's quick.
Right.
Or he can't play offense, but he can play defense. He is kind of like a worse version of Magic Johnson in that he can insert himself into a play and do an absurd no-look pass.
Right.
And redirect a ball to a place where the defense didn't think it was going to go, which then allows his team to score.
He is an exceptional passer. So his steal is that he is an exceptional misdirection passer. He does sports magic, essentially. Like, like sports magic, you know, as we do our spirit fingers. And also, you know, and here's the thing, he's not the only one with a special ability because apparently Kisei is like, you know, what's her name from X-Men, Mystique, and then he can copy people exactly. Right. So any move you show at him, he can do better. He does it exactly and better.
It's just annoying.
Yeah, and so that's where it gets into like we kind of teeter into the sports anime rule of like, it's not so much that it's physically impossible or that's superhuman, but every person has to have like an exceptional kind of like ability that makes kind of sense, and we'll kind of go over those moves in a little bit. But like, that's his jam, right? He's like the copycat. He's there to can do your move and better, but he's also the weakest of the miracles, all that stuff. And so we learned that Taiga and Kuroko is a 1-2 punch. They are really good, and they're the first people that show Kisei give him an L. You know, they're like, you know, I'm just going to deal your first L.
But this game, which they drag out over like 2 episodes,
right.
This practice game, they come up with some of like the most like absurd concepts where. So for the first quarter, they do their little dog and pony show where Taiga is hyper aggressive and dunks everything, and Kuroko is doing his magic passes,
right?
But he gets tired, and so they have to like come up with like a new shtick,
right?
And then it finally, when the game ends, and it's like 98 points to 98 points, and they're like, we have to finish it because we can't go into overtime because we don't have the strength to go into overtime. Kuroko goes, I have one more move, but it will only work once because he cannot copy it. And he's like, it's a buzzer beater. And
of course you can only do that once a game.
Yeah, it's the last thing of any game.
It's like, you could.
Yeah, and it was an alley-oop. And then when he throws the alley-oop up, they're like, oh my God, Kuroko shot it. No, he didn't. It was an alley-oop. Kisei jumps up to try and block it, and Taiga just keeps getting higher. And Kisei's inner monologue with like
his ass,
like Ben Stiller in Along Came Polly, with like
it's like he's just getting
right. And he's like, how does he keep jumping higher?
I see his light. Yeah, so it's really good. The inner monologue serves a purpose. It gives conflict and stakes where really it's just a practice game. So
Yep.
I appreciate that for what it does. So that's the first game you watch, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to do a little pause to talk about what we do with all sports anime, is to see if the rules that I've made up for sports anime still hold true with Kuroko no Basuke. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Rule 1, it follows an underdog story.
Yes, because even though he was one of the
Generations of Miracles. Yeah.
Generations of Miracles, he is the unsung hero that no one knew about. Like, even when they had like Sports Illustrated for kids come and interview this team, they forgot to interview him.
Right. They're like, they just didn't meet me because I'm
right. So even though he was on that team, he is an underdog for sure.
So that's I put down.
It's only a 2-year-old school.
Yeah, it's a new school. They're none of them are like really exceptional. Tyke is exceptional, but they say like he's kind of like A- compared to everybody else.
You know what he is? He's like a rough mold of clay.
He's very rough. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then the second one is they find out that they have one skill that they're superior in.
Yeah, I mean, because
that's a check if I've ever saw one. So,
yeah, because once we joked about how we only know about those two, and then we're eventually introduced to the other 5.
Yeah.
Well, they each like have the ththing that they do.
Right, exactly.
One of them plays exceptional defense, and they've never heard him speak.
Yes, that's his thing. He's 6'10", and he can't. No, 6'8", I think they made him, and he can't speak, which I thought was wild. Yeah, and I would say so. Like his thing is that he's so that kind of like feeds the underdogness.
Mm-hmm.
He does. Kuroko is not exceptional in anything, but he's exceptional at passing, and he uses his weakness to his benefit. The same thing like when we watched Ice Shield 21. He's kind of a goober, and because he was such a gopher escaping bullies all the time, it made him an exceptional runner, and that's what made him really good as a running back. So we're starting to see a pattern here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Third rule. Sports anime is spoken exclusively through internal monologue and external observers. Is that true?
Not the whole show, but yes, a large portion of it. Particularly all gameplay.
Yeah, all gameplay is all internal monologues and external observers. There's not, because they want you to get that aha moment, like when they figured it out. Like, they have a weakness, and they say at the same time, and then like that's when you start to realize it's like a chess game of the mind, right? Fourth is love stories are non-existent.
So far, 6 episodes in on my part.
It's basically all about them sports. The next one is all movement is almost superhero / superpowered in appearance. Now, I would say that it's more visual cues than it is superpowers. Like when he does like special passes, it kind of like lasers.
Yeah.
It kind of makes, but it's more of that's more of a visual cue.
He like bends it like Beckham,
right? And when you get later in, it does like make dunks look really like an air current follows the basketball, and or like and like one thing like, but when someone gets in the zone, like their eyes start to shoot lightning bolts out of their eyes and stuff like that.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah, because early on it's pretty. When you dunk with force, and Taiga does pull the rim down at one of the gyms, but. It was a little more direct, at least in the beginning.
Right, exactly. So, and the last one, and then I'm sure there's more, is characters are one-dimensional and are meant to fit a specific part of the sport. I.e., this guy is really good at catching. This one's really good at doing this. This one's really good at shooting. Like,
I think they're trying to build Taiga to be a more well-rounded player.
Like an all-rounder, yeah.
But all of the supporting cast, yes,
absolutely, 100% are. So it seems like the rules that I've created that are completely arbitrary that I've just noticed from watching the sport is surviving, and so that works for me.
Yeah.
So then eventually, there's another game. All right, Garrett. So let's talk about the Generation of Miracles. So we're going to start with the first one. We already talked about Kisei. One thing to note about the Generation of Miracles, and I think people will note this, is that every person has a color associated with them. I guess you can guess what Kisei's color is because he's blonde. Ki is the same as Kiiroi, which means yellow.
Okay.
And so his color is yellow and all that stuff. He's the copy guy. But then we get introduced to another character who like was drinking bean soup out of a can on the back of a thing. It was really weird. So I don't know what that was all about.
Making his teammate rickshaw him to see this game.
So that's Shintaro Midorima, who is the glasses player of the Generation of Miracles. He's the He is the 3-point shooter. He is the never miss, accurate, outside the rim, 3-point shooter. That's his jam. And Midori means green, so that's why his hair is green, and that's his thing. Then we meet Atsushi Murasakibara, who is a tall brick of wall of a man. He is 6'10", and he is 16. Don't know how that happened. Japanese. So Murasakiro means purple. So his color's purple. His hair is purple, and his deal is that he's the tall center that like no one can get by. He's just he's for perfect at defense as center.
Clogs the lane.
He's a perfect lane clogger. He is the Lottie Divaj of of Japanese high school basketball. The next one we meet is Daiki Aomine. He's their ace. He's like the best of the miracles. Ao means blue, so he's the blue guy with blue hair, and his deal is that he can play street ball. He's unpolished, but he also is exceptional at like basketball.
Like Allen Iverson?
Yeah, basically like can improvise, can do perfect like dribbling. He's just a perfect player. And then
he's on the And One tour.
Yes, he's like the professor. Have you ever watched the professor do his like, I went to Miami and kicked the crap out of this hater, that kind of thing. That's who Aomine is.
Yep.
And then we meet Seijuro Akashi, who is Aka means red, and he's the captain. He's like the mind of the team. And his deal is that he has this thing we'll talk about later called Emperor's Eye, which means that he can figure out everything that's happening on the field, what they're going to do, and we'll talk about the Emperor's Eye in a little bit. But
okay.
So you got like the perfect shooter, the copycat, the wall defense in the middle, the exceptional ace, and the field general. And that's what makes up this amazing team. So,
okay.
Yeah. So, so what do you think? So the next question I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to go into it a little bit more because we're going to play the game that we play every time we have a sports anime, is how well does this represent basketball?
I thought pretty well.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, it wasn't like people were like there was way too much dunking for high school players in my mind. But
because high school players don't dunk like literally. Well. Let me rephrase.
But they're not going to dunk that often.
I mean, we grew up in the suburbs, and there's a certain makeup of our teams, and none of them had the height to really do it. Because let's be honest, like I'm 6'2", and I didn't have the ups to ever do it. There are 6-footers who can dunk, but they're exceptional. You really need to get to like 6'3", 6'4", 6'5" before you can get people who can throw down all the time.
Right.
So to just sort of have that in a country that's not known for its size prowess, that was kind of unrealistic. But whatever. People like dunks. Chicks dig the long ball. Like.
So I thought it represented well. I didn't think it cartoonized it like iShield 21 did.
Right.
And like basketball is not too complicated of a sport, so I don't think they really needed to do that much extra to make it more exciting.
Right.
But as you know, this show, these sports anime always has to have ridiculous non-basketball things that they do.
Okay.
Some are relevant, some are not. So we're going to do the game in which you're going to hear what these moves are.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to tell me if, A, they're impossible. So this is no way this could ever be done. Then there's improbable, which means it's possible, but like, why would you do it? It doesn't function well for the sport.
Right.
And then finally, it's possible and you should do it. Right.
Okay.
So that's basically it. It's impossible, probable, and impossible, basically. All right. So the first thing is the zone. So the zone is a state of focused attention and energy that enhances one's performance. Kagami does this as well as another player. Mm-hmm. And it basically means that this person is like in this space of pure tenacity and competitive energy, and like they just don't think about anything else but winning and scoring and doing all that stuff.
Right.
So, and the way that, as they said, the way they represented the sport, everybody has like, they have like these kind of like light, like squinty eyes and like lightning's flying out of it, and they look very ominous and stuff like that. So, Garrett, taking the totality of what I just explained to you, what do you think about how they represent the zone? Is it impossible, probable, or possible?
Definitely probable. Mm-hmm. I mean, you talk about, I was watching some clip on TV the other day, and it had sort of in between the scenes of one of the NFL Sunday shows.
Yeah.
And Michael Strahan was on it.
Mm-hmm.
and he was talking about early in his career how he would find a way to get mad. He would find a way to get that in that zone where he was fierce, focused. The task at hand, getting to the quarterback, was the only thing that mattered. If you talk to Michael Jordan or watch the documentary that came out multiple times, he'll talk about like just feeling it, or you start stroking it to the point where you're not missing a single shot, and you sort of enter this higher plane. And obviously it's not for everyone, because it seems like only the elite hit this space.
Yeah.
And it might be more imagined than it is real, but as we know, the mind is a very powerful thing. So if you believe you can do it, a lot of times you can get yourself there. So I totally think the zone is a probable thing.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think the idea of it just being visual representation rather than you're actually like Raiden in Lightning, I think is just perfectly suitable for the sake of the show.
Sure.
The next two we're going to do is Kuroko's abilities. The first of which is called the Ignite Pass, which is an extension of his regular pass. Kuroko can move the ball even quicker, and he does this if his imperceptible pass can be intercepted at some point, where he receives the ball and then punches it directly to a free player. This way, the force behind the pass will increase greatly, and the ball moves much faster. So instead of how he normally gets the ball and he moves it quickly to another direction, he'll punch it in that direction.
Yeah.
Impossible, improbable, or possible, Garrett?
Possible, but dumb. Like, yeah, of course you could punch a basketball, but you don't have any level of accuracy.
That's true, right? Like if everybody could punch or kick a basketball with any sort of success, or kicking is illegal, but like if you could do it with any sort of success, everybody would do it.
The only time you punch a basketball is if like someone's dribbling or they've got possession of the ball, and you punch through it to knock it out of their possession, but never anything that requires a level of accuracy like a pass.
Especially one where in this case, like when you watch Kuroko play, he's able to like make a ball come straight at him, go 90 degrees in a different direction. So he's like literally like punching across his face and making the ball fly away.
Right.
Like, so you're saying improbable for this one?
Yeah.
But kind of stupid.
Yes.
You can editorialize, Garrett. It's totally fine to be like,
you can
improbable yet stupid.
You will just not be playing very long. You will be riding that bench.
Also, how many broken knuckles would you do doing that over time?
Oh, jammed fingers?
Oh, that would hurt so bad. Oh. The next one is called the Phantom Shot. This is also Kuroko's move. He passes like a normal player shoots with his wrist and fingertips. In this shot, he tries to do the same, but he passes it at the hoop. So
it's an alley-oop.
No, he's shooting, though. He's shooting to score. So instead of going up, he's passing forward. So imagine a shot that goes straight up towards the basket, but he's like kind of passing it forward. So imagine. So
you're saying he's got terrible fundamentals.
This would be terrible fundamentals because he's essentially slapping the ball into the rim.
Yeah.
Like sumo slapping it up into the air. But the thing that makes it special is that normally you can get the trajectory of a ball because they're usually lofting it up. They're giving it a hook.
Right.
Kuroko's go straight, and so most people have trouble blocking that because it's coming like, well over under their hands. So.
Okay.
So what do you think? Impossible, probable, improbable, or probable?
Improbable.
It is what you say. Like a lot of the times when they do these kind of like fancy schmancy abilities, it's really just bad techniques. It's like really making a potty shot seem like a really good move. Like, oh my god, he has such accuracy because he shoots from in between his legs. And he basket tosses, and they make it seem so fancy, but really it's like
man.
You're just a terrible player. And then so that's two improbables for poor Kuroko. Next we're gonna go to Aomine, who is our street ball ace. He has what's called the formless shot. This is apart from his ball handling and speed. Aomine can get a shot off from essentially any position on the court. One of his signature shots, the formless shot, is where Aomine lowers his posture to bypass the defense as he shoots when his body is nearly parallel to the ground. So this is essentially like flopping backwards, and at almost the point of falling out on the ground, he shoots from there, and he can make a basket from there. Impossible problem.
I mean, that should only happen if you're trying to like draw a foul on a 3-pointer,
Right.
and you're like going down with the foul and
Flopping,
you throw
yeah.
it up so that you get credit. You get 3 shots at the line.
Right.
Other than that, it's improbable.
It's improbable, and not only that, but like,
how do you
these things
give it
don't
any level of accuracy?
Right. It's more like hindering you than it does like make your opponent less able to block it, right? Like, there's many ways that you can make a person not block. You can do a sky hook, which keeps the person's away from you with your body. Easy. Fadeaway. A fadeaway is done every time.
Right.
And it's a perfect way of making
you can juke and fake him out.
You can get around them with a layup. Like, those are all things you can do. The idea of literally like doing a pratfall and then shooting just seems silly to me.
I know that we're only halfway through this, but they should have given someone an ability where their juke move was so quick that it could literally like break or sprain the ankle of the person.
Oh, that's one of Akashi's moves. He
okay. Sorry.
They called the break ankoru, and it's not one of the ones I use because I think that's possible because everybody does the break ankle like that.
Right.
It's a very common thing, especially in and one merchandise. Like, where there's like I speaking of and one merchandise, I had one and one T-shirt where it was a Rottweiler with a backwards cap and a like a baggy shirt and a gold chain.
Yeah,
like, I broke your ankles, and like the dog with his paws did like a gang symbol and stuff like that. And I was such a nerd too. So like this kid with a bowl cut and glasses, like wearing his and one T-shirt. Oh boy, I didn't know. So, and then finally, we're going to talk about Akashi's Emperor Eye, which I mentioned before. It's honestly kind of like the Sharingan, in that he can see the smallest details of a person's movements, including their breathing, heartbeat, sweat, muscle contractions, etc. With this, he can time his actions perfectly to nullify the opponent's movements, sabotaging whatever tactics the opponent was trying to execute. In short, he can see the future of his opponent's moves before they do it. So he can kind of like predict his players. So what do you think? Is the Emperor Eye a thing?
Yeah, I think the Emperor Eye, more than the previous 2 or 3 things, is when you talk to the greatest athletes in any sport, they will tell you that when they're in that zone, it feels like the game slows down.
Right.
When the game slows down, you perceive what other people are doing. You can see. You might not remember this movie. Was it Invincible? It was Mark Wahlberg is the guy trying to get on the Philadelphia Eagles in the 1970s.
What was the name of that movie? With Mark Wahlberg, right?
Yeah, it was actually. I like it because I like Elizabeth Banks.
And also like Rudy style movies.
But he's doing this drill that's in almost every movie. It's in Rudy, where you're playing King of the Mountain, where you have to go up against 2 linemen going up against one another, and he gives a guy a hint who's been beating him up in practice. And he grabs him and he brings him down to the ground. And he says, "What color are my knuckles?" What color are my knuckles? Because by being able to perceive where the weight was, he could tell what that guy's move was going to be. So I think Emperor's Eye is actually far more realistic than the previous 2. Certainly the formless shot.
Yeah. So the next one is the last one we're going to do is called the Sky Direct 3-point shot. And this is one that Midorima does, and he does it in coordination with another person. It consists of Midorima shooting without the ball, and during the process of shooting, receives the ball in his hand. If the pass goes
pre-setting for the arrival of the ball
in the air with his hand in where he's going to shoot the ball then enters into his launcher essentially.
Yeah,
and he shoots his perfect 3-point.
I mean, I guess because what you're really just exaggerating is a quick release. It's like you got a guy who's open just beyond the arc, and you just wing the ball to him real quick, and he's trying to get it in and out of his hands as quickly as possible. Right. And they're just like sort of comically exaggerating that.
Right.
So it's possible. I'm certainly probably not to the effect that this show uses it, but the concept is possible to me.
Right. So ultimately, like, we didn't see any impossibles, which is good. Means that it's a lot more true to form than other games would be. And so I think for me, it's a good show. Ultimately, it's a show that does basketball very well. I think it benefits from having good, crisp animation. I think the main character, the fact that it's like it's like a buddy show more than it is a, I Shield 21, I'm the guy that's going to beat everybody. It's kind of more of a team-based show.
Oh, no, this totally feels like it has fleshed out relationships.
Right, and like the kind of Mega Man aspect of it, where like you're beating bosses as you play the game, is kind of fun. And how would you approach beating a 6'10" center or a guy who can hit half-point 3-pointers every time? Like, how would you beat that person? So I think for me, that's also really exciting, and it does add enough drama for a show. But one thing that I like about sports anime is that the stakes are never so high that I get stressed out. I love watching sports anime, especially when I need a relaxing read or watch, and this is one of them.
Let's talk about the game that I didn't watch in its entirety. So as these
I was going to step into that too, yeah.
So as these sports anime go, there's always a next challenge, right?
Exactly.
I mean, you can never just be like, hey, we play 33 games in a season, 20 of them are going to be easy because there's not that great a team.
Yeah.
So they have to join.
They're going to have to be like a bad team plus, like there's something that they have to still hurdle over to get past that team. Yeah.
So the whole point of this is to get into some like inter-high school tournament and get to the end, and you're going to have to inevitably go across all these generations of miracle dudes. But before you get there, their play-in game of the tournament and their next hurdle is literally a black guy.
Yes. And he's from Senegal, which no one knew what it was. And very racistly talked about his name.
They couldn't get his name right, so they decide to call him Dad.
His name is Papa Mbaye, which I could pronounce. I don't think that's too hard to say. But because his name was Papa, they decided to call him Otosan, which means dad. So I thought it was funny. I don't know. This is what I wanted to put to the end because I think it's something that we have to kind of get a little touch in general. But we'll go into the main crux of it is he's a Senegalese player. He's 6'10", but we really need to get his space on how black people are portrayed in anime. Japanese anime doesn't portray black people very well at all, if at all. I would say it's almost problematic the way they do it. If we watched the last episode, we watched Bakano. I was very much taken back by the like lips of one of the black characters was very like, it's like blackface almost, the kind of caricature that they did in vaudeville that men would that white actors would do, and they still kind of do that in Japan, and they did that here. And also, like, how I jokingly say that every foreigner kind of has the same voice, like no matter what country like Senegal sounds very different than how we speak in the United States, but he's very like, how you get here, he's very like like, oh, you guys are very weak. Hey, wait, like it's very like they try to like accentuate R's and stuff like that to make them sound
right.
Yeah, and it's like, hey, you're from Senegal. Like that's what he sounded like to me. And also, like, I feel like if I'm a Senegalese person or just someone from another country, I don't think I would be as like. It's also the same voice actor that they use for the dumb characters, and I hated that. Like it's that same like, hey, eat the dicky mash. Like they did that same voice, and it kind of annoyed me. And like, I don't know. I feel like Japan needs to do better in that. And I always don't dislike when they have black characters. I don't think they do it well. They don't give it as much respect in giving the history. So I don't know. What did you think, man?
I found it comical in an inappropriate way, in that literally the next hurdle is not necessarily someone with a super skill, but just literally a tall black guy from Africa that they brought on because each team can have up to like two international players.
Yeah, 2 foreign players.
And it was almost kind of honest about itself that everyone thinks they're playing real games, and then they basically brought a real player in.
Yeah.
Someone that they would really come across in basketball, and they gonna whoop them butts. And so
I mean, for me, I don't know. It was an interesting way of thinking about it. I know, like, the idea of like basketball being about your stats, like your size. Like if you want to be competitive in basketball, you have to be tall. You can't not, like, you have the Muggsy Buggs, which are like 5'10" or whatever, and still do well, but you'd have to be exceptional in everything else.
Yeah.
Like top tier exceptional at everything.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's someone out there who's just as good, but they're 3 inches taller.
Right. Or you get like LeBron James is good because he's a physical specimen. Like he is a beast of a man. He's 6'10". He's humongous. He's a huge dude, and he's beefy, and he's just really good at sports. So
yeah.
I'm going to ask you the question that I always want to ask you every episode is, would you keep watching? Would you keep watching Kuroko no Basuke, knowing that like I've thrown a bunch on you anyway? Say this was like the first one I showed you. Would you keep watching it?
I would finish a season and go no further.
Okay.
I would want to see how that first arc comes to completion, or they can, or how they're going to cliffhanger you to the next season. But then I would see no need to continue.
Yeah, I would say that this show has a good length. It doesn't overextend itself. And every game has its own arc, and it has really good motives per show. It's not like the same things that you're trying to like rehash over the course of the episode. So I read it all the way through. This is my first time watching the show. Like I pretty much read it. So this is one of the manga ones I've had.
Yep.
And I would say that as a sports anime, it's really good. I think the next question I'm going to ask you, and this is going to be a long running one, is where does this rank on the sports anime that you've watched so far? So we got Prince of Tennis, we got iShield 21, and we got Kuroko no Basuke. Which one? What's your 1, 2, 3 right now?
This is number 1.
Okay.
I think it's got the most rounded characters. I think it does what iShield 21 and Prince of Tennis do, but better.
Yeah.
With better execution.
Right.
I grew up playing tennis. I want to enjoy Prince of Tennis, but the more like I reflect back on it, like it was just the absurdity of it, creating shots that weren't possible, and even the things that we just went over, they're just sort of exaggerations, and maybe they wouldn't be the best thing, but they're all things that could they're all things that could physically be done.
Right, exactly.
And iShield 21, I found it entertaining, particularly the sort of Roger from Doug quarterback that like
Inuma is the best character.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that at second because I wanted to watch him.
Yeah. It's a funny show. I always like laughed watching iShield 21, and I think that was always the big thing.
I think Prince of Tennis is pretty dull. I think that's my 3. And then,
but also you played. That's like probably one of the sports that you played the most, and so I think you probably have a higher, like that had a higher hurdle to meet if you wanted to watch it more, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the last thing we do on every episode is what we call our Weeb and Noob score. For those who need to know, this is basically Garrett and I's ranking on how we would prioritize it. Basically, how you would, as a new fan, treat it. Like, if you're a new fan, is this someone to get? If it's a high score, it means go watch it. It's going to really inform you as to what a certain genre is, what a certain history of the shows are. For Weeb, it's like in your total digest, you have this huge library that you want to get. Is this one you tackle first? So that's the idea. It measures priority, not if it's good or not, because I always like to say, watch what we introduce. They're all going to be good. Go.
Right.
So for this, let's switch it up again. Garrett, what do you give your noob score for Kuroko no Basuke?
6.5.
Okay.
And the reason
I'm surprised by that. I thought you were going to go a little higher in this one because
it could float up to a 7. But what brought it down is in terms of what it is, a sports anime.
Yeah.
It's an 8.
Right.
But you always ask that we also include in like the lexicon and the universe of anime, how important is it that you watch this?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's that important. I mean, if you want to say, as a student of anime, I want to tick off all the boxes, therefore I have to watch something in every genre, then yeah, it creeps up. But I don't think it's that like important or game changing or anything like that. All right, so you talked me up. 7.
Okay, that's fair. Okay. So for my Weeb score, I give this my Weeb score of 8.
Okay.
And I'm going specifically because as a Weeb, it is going to matter what genre it is, and it's going to matter how good it is at that genre. So my score is going to reflect that, and I think Kuroko no Basuke, knowing that it's on the top of the list for most people, and that it's not stupid, silly, jokes around with the genre. It has humor, but doesn't. But it also has some real intense moments. It has stakes, but it doesn't go too crazy into it.
Right.
it's going to be an enjoyable experience. So if you're specifically looking for a sports anime, I would say add it to your top 2 or 3 that you put in your Crunchyroll queue.
Yeah, makes sense.
If not, and you're thinking, that's why for me it's kind of like a more pedestrian 8 is, as Garrett said, like, you don't need to watch it. It doesn't do anything spectacularly, nor does it do anything that really makes you rethink of what anime could be. So yeah, as you said, Garrett, like, you may maybe talk me down a little bit from what maybe my original score would be. It's like, it's a good show. It's a good time. There's no stakes in watching it. And like episodic stuff, you can pick it up. You can put it down. You can start with one game. Once the game's over, put the show away for a few episodes. So that's the way I look at it.
For sure. For sure.
So as we reach minute 40 of our game, quarter 4's end. Garrett and I have reached the buzzer beater. We have one more shot to hit, and that means getting your thoughts. Is Kuroko no Basuke the kind of show that you think is on the top of your sports anime list? Did you enjoy it for its art? Did you enjoy it for the characters and the relationship they had? Or did you think it was just your run-of-the-mill sports anime and basketball's not all that interesting? Please let us know in the comments below, because we really want to continue the conversation, especially as it pertains to this genre of sports anime. We also would want to invite you to check us out on Instagram at Walnut Podcast. Also, check out our anchor.fm/Walnut Podcast if you want the audio of this. And also give us a 5-star review. It would really help us out and will allow people to see our show. Finally, you can follow us on Twitter at Weeb_Noob. Otherwise, we really want to hear what other shows you think we should watch, especially in this genre. But before we end the show, Garrett, what are some final thoughts you have of Kuroko no Basuke?
I wish I was good at something in my life that I too could be considered the generation of miracles.
Yes. So Garrett and I are going to be copying each other's moves, shooting from half court, doing misdirection passes by punching the basketball. All in all, to wish you all great. See you next week.
He's heating up.
Unlike Kuroko, we want to be visible, and we want you to watch more of our videos. Hit the subscribe button below.
Coach Aida might be able to assess physical talent, but we want to hear you assess the anime that we still need to watch. Let us know in the comments below.
He's heating up! He's on fire!